why you've been feeling stuck in your singing progress, and why the answer isn't behind more YouTube technique tutorials. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar to you, okay? You associate singing with some form of anxiety, whether it be when you have a upcoming performance or recital and you have some songs that have really intense sections, let's say, whether it be a high note, a sustained long note, or some form of like complex run. The point is, when you're trying to practice for these parts, you find that no matter how much you warm up, your voice and your body, and by extension your mind, doesn't feel ready to actually execute on those phrases. And whenever you try to practice it over and over again, you find that there's this recurring jaw or neck tension. Maybe you find that you're running out of breath, or maybe you feel lightheaded when you're trying to go for these things because there's so much tension going on for you trying to just squeeze this note out. And many times you just leave the practice room feeling worse than when you walked in. You feel an excess amount of fatigue. And that kind of makes you not want to go back to practice. I want you to know that all of these symptoms are not from you being lazy, they're not from you having a lack of discipline, and they're definitely not from a lack of you having talent. It is a breath efficiency and body alignment problem. Now, before I get to how I came to this conclusion, I need to tell you about who this video is for. Now, this video is for singers who care about their health, whether it be you already go to the gym or you partake in some sort of physical routine. You believe that upkeeping the body is the same thing as upkeeping the instrument. It's no different than you cleaning your fretboard after you have not cleaned it in a year and there's a bunch of dead skin cells on it. It's the same thing as you sending your drums to somebody so that they can put new heads on them and tune them for you real nice and good. You get what I'm going for? Take care of your instrument. Number 2, this is for singers who are practicing consistently, as I said in the beginning, but they're not seeing results because of all these, because of all these things, right? And lastly, I want to have people who are open-minded. I don't want to have people here who are trying to be like, oh, in this classical vocal French pedagogy, according to this, the breath is supposed to be done like this. I do not want to hear about it. I want to talk about science, biomechanics, and what actually works. I think that older schools of thought, as in like the French and the Italian schools of voice, I'm sure and I know that there are merits to those schools of thought. But in regards to breath, I'm not taking any of it. Now, the promise is I can help you improve your singing without adding more practice hours in the practice room. And it's not by chasing more technique. It's by fixing the other half of singing that nobody talks about. The system that supports your voice, your body, your breath, and your nervous system. Now, how did I come to this conclusion? Well, I studied vocal pedagogy at Berklee College of Music. My diploma's still in the mail. But graduated, studied vocal pedagogy from very high level and some Grammy-nominated professors that I'm not gonna name, where I learned in depth about vocal anatomy, all these little muscles, the larynx and all that, and vocal technique. But I found that as we kept discussing vocal pedagogy, I was having more questions about breath because I was feeling that my breath was inefficient and everything that they taught me about breath wasn't working out. Any kind of breath activation exercises where we go like like it helped me get awareness of my abs, but it never helped me actually apply it into my singing. And that was one of the main problems, is that when I asked about how do we, do breath well, we would always talk about, oh, you gotta stretch open the muscles of the rib cage and use your diaphragm. But that didn't address the root cause of why the ribs and the lungs weren't expanding properly, which is this posture. If you are watching this video, you probably have some form of one of these or a combination. I personally have a combination of these three, and we'll get into why later on in the video. But to sum it all up, it was all just focused on the rib cage and how it helped push air through our vocal folds, which is the most basic thing ever, and didn't address how our feet and our legs and our hips support our entire system to manage pressure throughout an entire body. This was the missing key, and it took me so long to understand how to actually fix this, because I kept practicing from a compromised system. I kept practicing thinking, okay, I just need to engage my abs better. I kept thinking about it, but the more I kept thinking about it, the more other parts of my technique suffered, and then I would thus compromise and actually use the accessory breathing muscles anyway, because I wanted to get the sound out, and that was the only way that my body knew how. And so these small accessory muscles get overworked, and they're not meant to take on that load. That load is supposed to be taken on by your abs, so you fatigue. And you don't even know that it's because of this. You think that, oh, my technique's not good enough, so I kind of suck and I shouldn't go and try to practice this part over and over because I'm just gonna get more fatigued. I should go search out more technique tutorials and try to get better. But it doesn't work because it's a fundamental systemic problem. And why do we have this? Why does this happen? It's because of modern life, right? Oh, spoilers. It's because of modern life. You have everyone sitting all the time. If you have a desk job, if you have school, if you drive, if you take a commute, you're sitting. And that's just a part of it now. It's a part of life. And we have to recognize that it is causing effects to our bodies, and we must take steps to counteract it. Not just singers. Most people in general should be doing this. But sitting, our phones, doesn't this look awfully similar to a combination of these two? Right? We're training our bodies to be comfortable in that position, and that just has a bunch of downstream effects to your voice. You're scrunching all these muscles, you're compressing your larynx, and everything in there is just becoming more tight and unable to actually work efficiently. Right. Lastly, sedentary habits. Most people don't move enough nowadays. But what happens when you come out the other side and you fix these imbalances? I would akin this experience to an old anime that I used to watch when I was younger. There's this scene with a character called Rock Lee, and he was in a fight where he purposely put on weights onto his arms and legs to fight this person, and he asked for permission from his sensei to take them off, and he dropped them. It was a massive explosion. It was freaking awesome because he was like, oh my god, he was carrying that much weight on him. And then once the weights were off, his movement was super fast and he was efficient as hell, which is exactly what I feel like it was like for me, starting to feel a little bit more engagement in my abs once I started fixing my body alignment. I was like, oh my God, I have so much more access to all these notes. Because once you start fixing these systems, your breath starts to drop down into your system lower. You're able to feel your breath more deeply. Your rib cage expands further. And your nervous system calms so that you're not scared of the notes while you're going into them. Your technique, because you're calm, you're actually able to execute on your technique while you're practicing. You're able to refine your technique and actually be in your own head analytically rather than fearfully. Those scary notes don't start to be so scary. It feels like you didn't even know the weights were there until you started aligning your body, and the effort just gets cut down. You're like, oh, things that used to take me a 7 out of 10 effort now only maybe give me a 4 out of 10. Because at the end of the day, singing is an athletic art. Our voices are part of our bodies. So we need to engage the system efficiently in order to execute on our athletic art. You wouldn't tell a footballer to only get better at football by playing more football. They have training drills outside of football. Same thing with singing. It's just that we haven't put this idea into the mainstream yet, which is why I'm trying to put it out there. Because your body sets the ceiling for how much you can do. If you have a V8 engine, but you don't have the corresponding body and wheels and handling systems to handle that, your car can't go very far. Same thing with your technique and your body. Now, how did I arrive at this conclusion? Well, my personal journey is that when I entered Berkeley, I found that, I was practicing consistently, I was lifting weights, I was eating better, and I was generally living a pretty good life in, kind of my dream school. However, I found that because in conventional gym advice, we have pin the shoulders back and down, stick your chest out, brace your core really hard, and squeeze as hard as possible. This kind of posture is good for strength and weightlifting, but it is not good for singing, because when you do this, you are compressing the back of the rib cage and you are forcing your ribs into a flared position, which is exactly what we see here. You're flaring your ribs and you're training that into a fundamental pushing movement pattern. And it's good for strength, don't get me wrong. But I am not a powerlifter or bodybuilder. I am a singer who just wants to look kind of jacked. I don't need those cues. And so all of these things led to making these issues worse, right? And so I didn't really know it at the time, but this created these issues where I have an anterior pelvic tilt, I have kind of a quad dominance where like majority of my weight is shifted forward, and I had underactive glutes, restricted rib cage, the whole 9 yards. And I forgot to mention this. As a teenager, I also spent a lot of time sitting, playing video games, MapleStory, League of Legends. Look at me, I'm from Malaysia, we love video games. But I unknowingly carried all of these imbalances into my college life. And so I found that I was running into these fatigue problems. I could sing, and I find that I could execute it, but I would get gassed out right after I'm done, and I wouldn't know why. long practice sessions felt really scary to me. I only could go in for maybe 5 to 15 minutes, which is a real imposter syndrome moment when your teacher is telling you, oh, you should be practicing 1 hour a day at this point in your singing career. Right? And generally, it felt like I was the problem because no matter how much effort I put in, I was just feeling worse and feeling fatigued and not really getting the results or improvement that I wanted. It became a part of my self-belief system where I was like, oh, I'm just I got into this school luckily, and I'm coasting by the strength of my intellect and work ethic rather than my actual capacity to be a good singer. And so I started avoiding practice. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, but I found that once my issues got worse because I continued lifting through this period and the imbalances just kept getting worse because I kept training them, I found that I just didn't want to practice at all. And so I stopped for almost a year and a half. It was really, really hard to reconcile with because I was having private lessons at the time where my knowledge of technique was improving and I could get it during the lessons, but because I never felt safe nervous system wise and my body alignment was not right at all, I never got to enjoy the full extent of my learning experience at Berklee, which is a little bit, not to say a little bit, quite regrettable. And so the turning point was when I realized, oh, there is a problem because I'm generally interested in fitness. And when I started hearing more about people talking about fascia and mobility, hip mobility, how does the hips relate to the rib cage, how do we stack the rib cage over the hips and the feet, all this biomechanics knowledge, it's not mainstream in the singing world. And so I found that I needed to dive into a rabbit hole of posture, biomechanics, fascia, and all the 9 yards to create a system where you could go from releasing all these adhesions in your fascia, which I'm going to get into what fascia is in a moment, and increasing your mobility so that you can build strength on top of that base. Right? That's the result. Now, phase 1. This is nervous system regulation. You can't make changes in a system that doesn't feel safe. You can't get your body to have more hip mobility or whatever outcome it is that you're trying to do in terms of realigning the body. If you don't start by regulating your nervous system, you're not gonna get anywhere. Also, this is a part of singing because if you can't maintain a certain level of mindfulness throughout your singing, you're gonna find that your focus can be derailed pretty quickly while you're singing just by, oh, did I leave the stove on while you're on the stage? Huh? No, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to be able to be focused. We're in flow state. Now, phase 2, which would be fascial release and mobility. This would be, taking a foam roller to all these places, rolling out all the different knots and adhesions that have come from, years of sitting in compromised posture. And this isn't very difficult. It just requires consistency and small amounts of effort every day. Now, lastly, conditioning. This would be like cardio. This would be, trying to increase your capacity for longer periods of practicing. This is the last phase. Once we've gotten the mobility, we want to lock it in by doing strength work, strengthening these muscles, making sure that it becomes your new normal rather than something that you have to release and do a bunch of work to get into. Because ideally, by the end of this, we want to be able to do maintenance on our body rather than rebuilding it from a misaligned state, right? That's the end goal. Now, reframing this, don't think about doing physical exercise as doing exercise, because there's a kind of connotation in our society that exercise is hard work, where it's really what is required of you to upkeep your instrument. It's the same thing as changing your guitar strings, same thing as changing your drum hit, except that the longer you do this process of upkeeping yourself and building your capacity, you get to trade in what was a Squier Stratocaster that you got when your 16th birthday. You get to trade it in for a Mexican Fender custom shop, right? You get to gradually keep trading up. Maybe it becomes a Mayonnaise 7-string Gent Master machine, right? You don't know the full extent to which you can hone this system. Your capacity for performance improves as you stay consistent. Now, what happens if you don't put effort into these 3 phases? Well, you'll stay stuck without knowing why, and you'll be wondering what even is the point to keep practicing when I just feel like I'm taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Because I felt like that for the longest time. Believe me, I spent 1.5 years not practicing, even though I was in one of the most prestigious music schools ever. Because a house built on a foundation of sand will never be stable. Don't end up like me and feel regret over the lost growth that I could have had while I was, receiving tutoring from the best teachers in the world. And while I'm grateful for everything that I learned from them, I regret not being able to take advantage of it to the fullest. So, I don't want you to suffer the exact same fate. What can I do for you? Very simple. I want to know more about other people's problems. I want to talk to people, and my long-term vision for this is building a community of people who integrate their lifestyle with their singing. I want to go beyond traditional vocal pedagogy and generic fitness advice like pin your shoulders back and down. I want to have a like-minded community of people who want to improve themselves in the way that aligns the best with our niche interests, i.e. maintaining fitness and being the best singers that we can be. So, if you have any questions and if you would like to just talk about this topic with me, please hit the link below. We can have a little consultation about your current situation. I love to hear about, your current experience with practicing. And I can offer you a free little program that you can run every day that it will basically get you like the 80-20 rule of results. You're just gonna implement that maybe like 5-10 minutes a day and you're gonna be good. Alright? Book a call if you're ready to stop fighting with your body and work with it instead.